This is a game called Dominion, and Dominion, you are the ruler of a small kingdom, trying to grow it into a greater kingdom as the other rulers of their kingdoms try to do the same thing. This is a deck building game, so if you've never tried one of those before, I'm not sure if this is the first one, but I feel like this is the one that really inspired a lot of the other ones, and you've seen a lot of other ones kind of ripping off in one way or another. And what that means is basically as the game goes along, you're building a better and better deck. You're drawing cards from that same deck over and over again, and so your deck is ideally becoming stronger as the game goes along. What you're going to do is everyone's going to start off with a deck with 3 estates and 7 coppers. These coppers are treasure. They're going to be used to buy stuff. These green cards, in this case estates, are victory cards, and those are going to be worth points at the end of the game. So each of these is worth 1 point. You're theoretically starting off with 3 points at the beginning of the game. You're going to shuffle those cards up. You're going to draw your starting hand of 5 cards. And then you're going to use it to buy something that's on this board. Everything on this board costs whatever is in the lower left-hand corner to buy it. You can buy these different things, which are actions. You can buy these cards up here, which are treasure. They'll allow you to buy stuff more efficiently. Or you can buy these cards up here. Again, those are victory cards, that are going to be worth points at the end of the game. Let's say, just for the sake of example, we spent 4. We bought this card right here. We take all these cards, we take the 5 cards we used in the first place, we take the card we bought, we put them in the discard pile, and then we would draw 5 fresh cards for our next turn. Our next turn we'd spend those. Again, we got 3 copper. Let's say we bought this. We put those in our discard pile. And when it comes time to draw our next hand, we don't have anything that we can draw. So we're going to take our discard pile, we're going to shuffle it up, and now that's going to become our draw pile. You're going to draw 5 cards, and you're going to take your next turn. So again, the idea is the cards you're buying are going into your deck, and they're ultimately going to become part of your next hand. And so your hands are ideally going to become more and more powerful as the game goes along. Your turn is always going to consist of 3 phases. You can think of it as A, B, C. So A is action. You can take one action that you have in your hands, and you can play that action card. Let's say, for the sake of example, you had this card. It says action plus 3 cards. Well, that means you get to draw 3 cards into your hand. The B in ABC stands for buy. You can take whatever treasure you have and you can spend it to buy something. So in this case, each of these copper is worth 1 treasure. We can use it to buy something costing up to 6. Whatever you buy is going to go into your discard pile. C stands for cleanup. You're going to take all the cards that you used or didn't use. You're going to put those in your discard pile, and you're going to draw your new hand. So this isn't a game where whatever cards you don't use, you hold on to for the next hand. Everything is going to get put in your discard pile, and you're going to draw 5 new cards. If at any point, like right here, you've only got 4 cards, you draw those 4 cards, you shuffle up your discard pile, make that your new deck, and then draw the 5th card. A few things I'll point out. When I say action, you get 1 action. So if you have multiple actions in your hand, you can only use 1 of them. When I say buy, you only get 1 buy. So if you have 7 coins, you can't buy one thing that costs 4 treasure and something else that costs 3 treasure. You can only buy 1 thing. The different actions you get are going to be things that make your turns more effective or that hurt other people. And sometimes they're going to change those rules I just mentioned. So part of what's interesting about this game is that the 10 action cards that you can buy, or the 10 cards you can buy from, are going to change each round. So there's 27 different cards you could use. And if you buy expansions, then there become 1 million different cards you can use. And each time you're going to choose which 10 you're playing with. And which 10 you're playing with are each going to have their own set of rules. And they're going to have different ways they interact with the other cards you have. And therefore, there's going to be different strategies each time you play the game. I've chosen these 10 just because a lot of them represent different concepts which will come up in the game. So this is a village. Village says +1 card, +2 actions. Anytime you see something that says plus however many cards, that means you draw that many cards from your deck. +2 actions, like I said, normally you just get 1 action per turn, but this means now you get 2 additional actions. So key thing is whenever you play an action, that uses up the 1 action you had, but now you've got this +2 actions, now you get 2 fresh actions that you can use. This card right here says +1 buy, and then there's 2 treasure and a golden circle. So +1 buy means now instead of being able to buy 1 thing, you can buy 2 things. You could accumulate multiple buys through multiple actions and be able to buy multiple things with the amount of treasure you have. So I have 7 treasure and 2 buy, like I said earlier. Now I can buy 2 things, one that costs 4 and one that costs 3, for example. Just because you have 2 buys doesn't mean you have to use them. You could still buy just one thing, but that extra buy gives you more optionality. This symbol right here means you have an extra 2 treasure to spend this turn. So if I had 4 copper, that gives me 4 treasure to spend, but this means now I have 6 to spend this turn. Whatever treasure you don't spend at the end of your turn, you lose it. You don't get to carry it over from one hand to the next. So you're going to discard the copper that you had, and then these 2, whether you spent them or not, sort of disappear. This one here says gain a card costing up to 4 treasure. Again, how much something costs is right here in the lower left-hand corner. Gain a card just means you take that card and you put it into your discard pile. This one here says it's worth a victory point for every 10 cards in your deck rounded down. So usually you're going to be buying from this set of victory cards up here, but it's possible that one of the 10 cards you have that you can buy is also going to be a victory card. So this is something else that you can earn points with through the game. This says trash up to 4 cards from your hand. Normally when you discard something you put in your discard pile, trash means you remove it completely from the game. This is an attack. It says +2 treasure, so that's 2 extra treasure to spend, but then each other player discards down to 3 cards in his hand. So the attacks are going to hurt other players in the game, and there are certain cards which will say reaction, which allow you to counter somebody else's attack. So this card is a moat. If you play it on your turn, you get +2 cards. But you see there's some other text here. It says when another player plays an attack card, you may reveal this from your hand. If you do, you are unaffected by that attack. So you would show people that you have a moat. You put it back in your hand, which means you can still use it on your turn, or still use it to block another attack from somebody else later. But this card allows you to block an attack when somebody plays it. So when you buy, you can buy any of these 10 cards here. You can also buy a treasure up here. Copper costs 0, so you can always buy a copper whenever you want. Silver costs 3, and whenever you spend it, it's going to be worth 2. And the gold costs 6, and whenever you spend it, it's going to be worth 3. So it's going to give you 3 treasure to add to your hand the next time you spend it. Other cards you can buy are victory cards. For 2 treasure, you can buy one of those estates you started the game with, which is worth 1 point. For 5 treasure, you can buy a duchy, which is worth 3 points. And for 8 treasure, you can buy a province, which is worth 6 points. Those cards are going to go into your discard pile, just like the treasure and just like the actions. So they're going to be worth points at the end of the game. At the end of the game, you're going to take your deck, look through for all the victory cards, see how many points you've got. But they're going to take up space in your deck until then. So anytime you draw a hand of 5 cards and you've got a duchy in it, that duchy is essentially worthless, and it's taking up space in your deck. There's one other card over here, which is a curse. And you might have noticed there's one other card which we didn't fully explain earlier, which is the Witch. The Witch says each other player gains a curse card. So when you play it, you draw 2 cards, and then everyone else takes one of these curses. When you're counting up your points at the end of the game, each curse is going to be worth -1. They're also going to have that same problem that the other cards had earlier, which is they take up space in your deck. So when you draw your hand, a curse is clogging up your deck, and it's going to be worth negative points at the end of the game. You're going to keep on playing the game until one of 2 things happens. Either the number of provinces in the game runs out, or 3 different piles, which could include victory cards, curses, any of the cards you can buy, or treasure. 3 different piles run out. Whenever that happens, that's the last turn. You finish out that turn, and then you count up the points. So again, you look through your deck and your discard pile. You get points for all the green cards that you have, and you lose points for any curses that you have. Whoever has the most points wins. If the highest scores are tied at the end of the game, the tied player who has had the fewest turns wins the game. If the tied players have had the same number of turns, it says they rejoice in their shared victory. This is one of those games where it's possible that it could end in a tie. I will say most of the time I've played Dominion, there's been a clear winner. In fact, I've played it a ton of times, and there's almost always been one person who has more points than everyone else. That's how you play Dominion. It's a really fun game. Like I said, it's a deck builder game. If you've never tried something like that, Dominion is definitely a great one to start with.